Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of the hour. Israel declares Gaza is burning as it begins the main stage of a ground assault on Gaza City, ordering residents to flee. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says troops are dismantling Hamas infrastructure amid heavy air, sea and tank strikes. The UN rights chief condemns Israel's strike on Hamas negotiators in Qatar as a breach of international law that threatens regional peace. Arriving in Doha, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warns only a short window remains to broker a ceasefire in the nearly two-year conflict. The United Nations Commission says Israel commits genocide in Gaza, carrying out 4 of the 5 acts defined in international law, including mass killings and starvation. Israel denounces the report as distorted, insisting its campaign targets Hamas and not civilians. A Russian strike on Zaporizhzhia kills 1 and injures several as President Volodymyr Zelensky says over 3,500 drones and 190 missiles hit Ukraine this month alone. Amid the escalation, President Donald Trump plans to speak directly with Zelensky. President Trump is set to arrive in Britain for a state visit centred on trade and technology, with Google announcing new AI investment. The UK and US plan to sign a deal fast-tracking nuclear power projects while royal pageantry unfolds at Windsor. President Trump says Afghanistan, Bolivia, Burma, Colombia and Venezuela have failed to uphold counter-narcotics pacts, warning their US funding is at risk. He repeats accusations that Nicolas Maduro runs a drug network as the US strikes a Venezuelan vessel. The United States and China agree on a framework to shift TikTok to US-controlled ownership, a move affecting 170 million American users. President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping plan to confirm the deal on Friday in a rare breakthrough amid their trade war. The FBI says suspect Tyler Robinson sent a text and wrote a note declaring he would kill Charlie Kirk with his DNA found at the scene. FBI Director Kash Patel confirms Robinson appears in court today, though the motive still remains unclear. Now, our top story this hour. Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva has denied a new report accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza, calling it fake. The report, published by a UN Commission of Inquiry, blames Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, for incitement and attacks on Palestinians. Let's listen in to what the permanent representative of Israel to the UN stated.
3 individuals serving as Hamas proxies, notorious for their openly anti-Semitic positions and whose horrific statements about Jews have been condemned worldwide, released today another fake report about Gaza. The report relies entirely on Hamas falsehoods, laundered and repeated by others. These fabrications have already been thoroughly debunked, including in an independent, in-depth academic study by Bessa.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry has also rejected the report and called its findings distorted and false, while also calling for abolishing the commission. Meanwhile, the report cites killings and aid blockages, forced displacement and the destruction of a fertility clinic to support its findings. Israel's Foreign Ministry has rejected the report as distorted and false and called for the Commission's abolition. We are now joined by Gedaliah Blum. They're a Middle East Affairs expert, and they join us live from Abuja in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us, Gedaliah, on the programme. How significant of a report is this, and what weight does it have?
On a practical sense, it means nothing. This report, they don't have any jurisdiction. They have no obligations by any law to weigh out the evidence as credible or not. Those in the Human Rights Council even include Qatar, who just yesterday, the former Qatari president was found speaking on a leaked audio that said that the Muslim Brotherhood is essentially controlling Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera English goes into about 120 different countries. So these are the types of propagandists who will go by any means necessary in order to push their own agenda and their own narrative. And these are the people who are coming in control of writing these reports and publishing these reports. And I would actually go against the foreign ministry and even our UN representative by not actually focusing on the distortion of the facts that they get them from Hamas themselves, which is, of course, they're true. But I think the focus should be on the authors of these reports and to expose that they are the least credible people to be writing these reports.
Yes, and Gedaliah, this report joins a long list of bodies and actors who have called on Israel's actions in Gaza, a genocide, or have at least showed genocidal intent. That is what, of course, this report has said. The UN's Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights have said, and of course Israel is facing an international Court of Justice hearing brought by South Africa, which is expected to take years. And of course, the International Association of Genocide Scholars passed a resolution, and several countries also accuse Israel of the same. How do you respond to this? Of course, the actions include that of killing members of the group, that group being Palestinians, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of the group in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births. How does Israel respond with evidence that it does not commit these actions?
Well, first and foremost, I want to go through the list of all of those who are condemning Israel for genocide. And I want everybody to go and look at their record. I want your audience to ask, are these agencies, have they once since October 7th, called for civilians to be removed from a war zone and to become refugees in a safe area where humanitarian aid is available, where medical care is available, where they're out of harm's way of a just war against Hamas following October 7th. And you know what, I'll give your audience the benefit, I'll save their time. I'll say the answer is no. Not one of these agencies who are accusing Israel of genocide has ever called for the civilians to be removed as refugees. And ironically enough, the Palestinians themselves under the UN have their own distinct UN agency for refugees called UNRWA. And UNRWA themselves, who are responsible for refugees, Palestinian refugees, have also not called for the removal of civilians from the war zone, which beforehand, as you can see, before October 7th, the international community would call Gaza an open-air prison, the most condensed area in the world. But we also knew that Hamas embedded themselves in every single civilian institution, population in all of Gaza. They dug tunnels under schools, hospitals. They use hospitals as military compounds. And I think overall, you put all these things together, and you have the question should be is why haven't there been one call from the international community for refugees of innocent civilians to leave Gaza instead of allowing them to become used as human shields and die, and use that as ammunition against Israel? So the question is, do they really care about the civilians? Do they really care about genocide? The answer is no. They're weaponizing this all against Israel and the Jewish people.
Okay, Gedaliah, do stay with us as we have further updates, this time coming from inside Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has appeared in court for a new hearing in his ongoing corruption trial. He faces charges of bribery, fraud and breach of public trust. Netanyahu confirmed that Israel has launched an intensive operation in Gaza City while this occurs. As he testifies, protests erupt outside the Tel Aviv court. Some protesters were wearing masks of Netanyahu and calling for his resignation and jail time, demanding a return to normalcy. Let's listen in to some of the protesters' statements.
And I'm here now in front of the court, because Bibi Netanyahu thinks that he's above the law. He's a criminal, he's stolen, he's received money and gifts. And the worst of all is that we're in an endless war where we've lost soldiers. He is a worldwide criminal. He's bringing to the death and the homicide and the death of the people of Gaza and of Israel. Him, together with Hamas, have to leave their seats and go to jail. We need to get back to a normal life. We need to bring our hostages home. We have to bring our soldiers home. We have to start feeding both our people.
Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, protesters and Israeli families of hostages also took to the streets and called for a ceasefire to bring back the remaining captives. Let's listen in to what the hostage family members had to say.
We came here last night. We heard the bombs are getting stronger all over Gaza. Our children are there. The Prime Minister Netanyahu, instead of saving our children, is bombing them. He doesn't want negotiation. He wants them to come back not alive and disappear there. We trusted that the government will do whatever she can to bring them back, but we understood that she is doing everything she can that they won't come back, and we came here to stay. We won't leave this street until Netanyahu will bring the deal that says we stop the war for the last hostage come back.
We arrived late last night to send a clear and straight message to the government and, of course, the Prime Minister of Israel. We will not leave this place until you give us all our loved ones back. It has been way, way, way too long, and you can't drag your feet any longer. If you don't stop the war now and bring back all the hostages, you will be responsible for the death and the disappearance of all the remaining hostages, dead and alive. Bring them back today. There is no time to waste anymore.
Okay, we are once again joined by Gedaliah Blum. Gedaliah, let's first start. If you could briefly tell us a little bit about Netanyahu's corruption trial. This has obviously been going on for 5 years. How significant is it, and how significant are these charges that the Israeli Prime Minister is facing?
They're not significant at all. It's the institute. I don't want to put out our dirty laundry out to the international audience, but since you brought up the subject, there is a very big split within Israeli society politically. The left power. They are no longer able to win at the ballot box, but they do have control over a lot of the institutions, including the judicial, and they're weaponizing the judicial system in order to go after their political opponents. And I just want to just leave it at that. They don't represent the overwhelming majority of the Israeli people. We're not interested in these corruption charges. It's a distraction. It's being weaponized, and it's pretty much going to go away. Even if he's guilty, it doesn't mean he's going to have to leave. You're talking about, very, very insignificant charges that are just being blown up in order to upend and to remove a Bibi from office.
Yes, and moving on, Gedaliah, of course, here, looking from the outside within Israel, what we see is thousands and thousands of people lining the streets, asking for an end to the war. We've just seen there protesters dressed in orange with Netanyahu masks on in prison jumpsuits. Can you tell us a bit more about how divided Israeli society is politically?
Well, when it comes to those people, these are the fringe. These are the fringe of the fringe. These are the people that are actively out dressing in costumes and again trying to upend the government. And as everybody heard through the clips that you said that you played, not one person, not one comment was made in the direction of Hamas, as like Hamas is not in the picture. That they're telling, and I wouldn't want to speak out against the hostage families. They're doing exactly what they should be doing. Their number one interest and their only interest is to bring their children home, and that's it. And I would do the same exact thing as they're doing. Unfortunately, you don't build out national policy based on one specific person's self-interests, as great as they are. We have a national interest to make sure that Hamas is removed from power. That Hamas understands this, that the only leverage that they have is to hold on to the hostages. There's nothing under the sun that the Benjamin Netanyahu government can do to bring the hostages home without risking our national security for the same thing to happen again. And that is where we're drawing the red line. And as hurtful and as terrible as that sounds, the war, and we must make sure that that there is no October 7th ever again.
Okay, Gedaliah Blum, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Pleasure to talk to you. We now move over to Europe, where since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians have gone missing, with over 11,700 bodies returned to Ukraine, mostly unidentified. Forensic DNA laboratories have expanded significantly, now working around the clock to identify remains despite challenges such as burned or fragmented bodies and limited pre-existing DNA samples from soldiers. Thousands of bodies have arrived in refrigerated trucks, often in poor condition and sometimes mixed, complicating identification efforts. The International Red Cross supports repatriation and provides logistical aid, but identification can still take many months due to the volume and condition of remains. This is what the deputy head of Ukraine's State Forensic Center, Ruslan Abbasov, has said.
Шок, тому що ми привикли там 1, 2, 3, 10, і вони там якось поступово заходять. А коли почали, крім цих тіл, бо крім репатріації ще ж надходять. Є, як кажуть, бойові втрати, є, ймовірно, загиблий такий, в нього є купа свідків, але без ДНК-експертизи слідчий не може, не хоче ризикувати і віддати, не дай Боже, не те тіло. Ми думали 500 це багато, потім було 900, там 909 і таке інше. Зрозуміло, що для нас 6 тисяч створило черговий новий виклик. Але ми ж не сиділи, чекали, нам кажуть, буде 1000, ми такі сидимо, буде 3, ми сидимо. Ми постійно розвивались, тому ці ми не полишаємо просто спроби і надії. Коли кажуть, навіщо затягують ідентифікацію і репатріацію, насправді ми не затягуємо. Ми просто не опускаємо руки. Коли в нас не виходить, то ми не віддаємо цю експертизу, а ми до неї постійно повертаємось. Як я казав, і 5, і 7, і 10, були випадки понад 30 разів.
Ukraine's Interior Ministry has expanded its forensic capacity, but it still may take over a year to identify all the bodies. DNA matching relies heavily on samples from relatives, since soldiers' DNA has only recently been collected routinely. Furthermore, Russia has been accused of delivering remains in a disorganized way, hindering the identification process. This is what Ukraine's Interior Minister Ihor Klemenko has said.
Дуже часто ми бачимо просто частини тіл. І в нас багато випадків, мабуть, сотні, коли ми в одному мішку, в другому, в третьому маємо остатки однієї. Деколи навіть фіксуємо факти, коли в наступній репатріації частина цього нашого військового приходить або через репатріацію. І тому це накладає достатньо високу відповідальність на тих людей, на тих експертів, які здійснюють і розтин, огляд.
The ongoing difficulties in identifying missing soldiers highlight the human cost and uncertainty caused by the war. This is one of the wives of the Ukrainian missing soldier had to say.
Йому хотілося поїхати саме на фронт, саме зі своїми побратимами бойовими. І ось рік тому, після навчання, десь місяць було в них навчання, він поїхав під Покровськ. Ось 15 липня це був його другий бойовий вихід. Він мені записав в кружочок, що я тебе дуже люблю, що я через 5-6 днів повернусь, що вимикаю зв'язок, скоро буду. І десь через 7 днів мені зателефонували з ТЦК, сказали, ви вже знаєте за свого чоловіка? Кажу, ні. Кажуть, він зник безвісти. Приїжджайте, оформляйте документи. У нас майже кожен день в групах пишуть, що з Новоселівки повертають тіла. Тобто ідентифікують, повертають, і це прям, особливо зараз, останні півроку, це дуже активно почали повертати тіла, ідентифікувати.
We're now joined by Julia Kazdabina, who's a senior fellow at the Ukrainian prison, and she joins us live from Kiev to discuss this further. Thank you very much, Julia, for joining us here on the programme. Julia, we often talk about the developments on the battlefield and the diplomatic efforts towards peace. However, this strikes more as a human angle. Could you tell us a bit more about the feeling in Ukraine? Of course, reportedly hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives during the war. How is it affecting Ukrainian society going through a war like this? Now it's almost reached its 4th year.
Well, of course, Ukrainian society is deeply hurt by what's happening. And of course, now I don't remember the statistics, but now it's almost every family who has somebody in the war and somebody who died in the war. And for example, my family has a nephew fighting at the front line and a very good friend who was captured by the Russians as a civilian during the occupation of Kiev Oblast, and he's been in the Russian captivity for more than 3 years, and from witnesses who were recently released, we know that he is tortured there, and it's a very, very painful thing to know, because one thing is to read about it in the news, a totally different thing is to think about it as something that's happening to somebody you know. But at the same time, you understand that all these body exchanges and all these things, especially the way Russia does them, because it's true that they sometimes return, just as Ukrainian authorities say, parts of bodies in different shipments, and also sometimes there are even parts of Russian soldiers returned to Ukraine for whatever reason. And so it's they do these exchanges as a part of the so-called peace process, but at the same time, the way they do it, it's clear that this is not meant to bring things closer to peace, and also the cruelty that Ukrainians experience in Russian captivity, under the Russian occupation. It sends a clear message to us what's going to happen if we accept Russian demands, and also the fact that Russia continues preparing for further aggression. It also sends us a message what's going to happen if we agree to the Russian condition of what they call demilitarization. So although Ukrainian society is hurting very deeply, and it's you cannot really see it on the outside. Streets in Kiev at least look pretty happy, but when you start talking to people, you understand how much pain it is. But at the same time, we really understand that if we surrender, things are not going to get any better.
Julia Kazdabina, thank you very much for sharing that and for your insight on the topic, and wishing you all the best. We now move on and stay in the region where For the first time since Russia used Belarus to enter Ukraine, US military officers observed the joint Zapad 2025 war games between Russia and Belarus. This marks a shift as Washington seeks warmer ties with Belarus amid heightened regional tensions after Poland shot down Russian drones crossing its airspace. The war games involved fighter jets, drones, helicopters and infantry drills, showcasing combat readiness. Belarus has long been a close Russian ally, allowing Russian troops and tactical nuclear weapons on its soil. Recently, Trump's administration moved to reopen the US embassy in Belarus and lifted sanctions on Belarus's national airline after President Lukashenko freed political prisoners. US officers met with Belarusian Defense Minister Viktor Kirk during the exercises, which included observers from 23 countries, including NATO members and China. This visit signals potential diplomatic efforts to influence Belarus amid the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Now we move over to the United States, where US President Donald Trump has announced plans to sue the New York Times for $15 billion, accusing the newspaper of defamation and libel. In a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, Trump criticized the paper for its coverage, particularly its endorsement of Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. He claimed the Times has been a mouthpiece for the radical left and vowed to take legal action from Florida, a Republican stronghold. This isn't the first time Trump has targeted the paper. Previous lawsuits against the Times, including one over his tax records, have been dismissed. Trump's latest legal battle is a continuation of his ongoing feud with what he describes as left-leaning media outlets. We're now joined by Major General G.D. Dwivedi. He's a global strategic expert and he joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us here on the program. Major General, does Donald Trump have any standing here when he moves to sue a quote-unquote radical left-leaning media outlet for an endorsement of an opponent in an election campaign?
Well, Thomas, as far as President Trump is concerned, he goes by his own perceptions. And his perception is that the left-right media has been inimical to his reputation and interest. And therefore, he has quoted the writings of New York Times and also an editorial where they have carried the piece that Donald Trump is unfit to hold the office of presidency. And also the Penguin Group, they published a book, Lucky Loser, how Donald Trump squandered his father's fortune and created illusion of success. So therefore, I think President Trump has decided to take on the New York Times, and particularly he feels that the paper have been very pro Kamala Harris during the last election in 2024. So therefore, I think President Trump is going ahead with what his perceptions are, and he has planned to sue the New York Times for $50 billion. And but as you rightly said, that his two previous defamation cases were dismissed. So let's see where does this case go, and we'll have to wait and watch, Thomas.
Yes, Major General Dwivedi, do stay with us as we stay in the United States for our next story, where thousands gathered at Arizona State University on Monday night to honor Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist and co-founder of Turning Point USA, who was shot and killed last week during a college event in Utah. Let's listen in to what some of the attendees had to say.
Well, I love Charlie. I'm a patriot and a Christian, and we've gone to many rallies. I've seen Charlie myself, met him before, so he just has a big place in our heart. And my daughter, she's just brokenhearted. She really wanted to come tonight, and I agreed. So we got to do the rally or the vigil the other night with the drive, and so we're doing this tonight, and we're going to get to go to service as well. And so we're just really happy just to be able to celebrate Charlie and to see where God's got the country, because I think it's time for our country to come be less divisive and just really have a community of people and believers and stand up.
I'm hoping to see the movement that Charlie started grow exponentially. I mean, it was already a pretty big movement, hence why you see a lot of young conservative men are leaning more on the conservative side, or more men are leaning on the conservative side. But I think from this situation, and what I'm hoping is that it grows 10x more than what it's already been. And I think it just starts here with people standing up, being vocal, standing up for free speech, and supporting Charlie at the end of the day.
We move on now, where President Trump has also confirmed and formally announced that he will attend and deliver remarks at the funeral of Mr. Kirk, scheduled for September the 21st in Glendale, Arizona. Kirk played a significant role in mobilizing support among young conservative voters. Let's take a listen in to what Trump said.
It was a very sad weekend in the sense that we lost a great person. I'll be going on early Sunday morning. We're going to Arizona, taking some people with us on Air Force One. Maybe you people are going to be with us, I don't know. But we're going to be going Saturday early on Sunday morning.
Now, FBI Director Kash Patel revealed the suspected gunman, Tyler Robinson, wrote a threatening note and sent a text message before the attack, indicating clear intent to kill Kirk. Multiple individuals have been fired or suspended for publicly celebrating the death of Kirk. Employees faced disciplinary action after making remarks that were deemed inappropriate or insensitive. Meanwhile, in Seoul, South Korea, over 100 students and activists took to the streets, chanting "We are Charlie Kirk" in a rare international show of support for the controversial American figure. Okay, we are now joined by Major General Gigi Davidi. Major General, we have just heard Donald Trump's statements there that he will be attending the funeral of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, of course, a very, very divisive character, known to say some very divisive things, whether that's on the topic of abortion or gun rights. What is Donald Trump signifying when he is expected to attend and even say words and now, as we know, give the Presidential Medal of Honor to someone who has these very, very polarizing views?
Well, Thomas, one thing which is characterizes Donald Trump is personal loyalty, and people who are loyal to him, people who have done favors for him, well, he holds them very dearly. And so also Charlie Kirk, because he was a strong supporter of President Trump, and he contributed a lot in mobilizing the young conservative voters during the last President Trump's elections. So therefore, President Trump is going to pay back. Well, Charlie Kirk was a divisive character, no doubt, but he founded the foundation and the turning point, which was for young people, and a lot of young people were part of the organization. It is evident that more than 70,000 will be attending the service, memorial service, coming 21st September. So, in a nutshell, President Trump always supports people who support him. His loyalties are paramount. He selects people by loyalty rather than by professional competence or the repo. So therefore, his attending the Charlie Kirk's memorial service is only further reinforces the point that President holds loyalty very dear to his heart, and that's what he has said. And he will be attending the memorial service and also possibly honoring late Charlie Kirk. So that is quite expected of President Trump, and I would say that it's in line with his persona or personality. Thomas.
Yes, Major General Davidi, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. It's a pleasure to have you on. Well, that is all that we have time for this hour, but we will continue to